Hmm. Okay. Yes.
Raghu.
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon and warm welcome to all of you. Today we are starting the webinar on the spectrum of the pediatric COVID. And then today's topic is very important in the interest of the third wave, which we are all anticipating. And everywhere in the media and in the news and all, we are hearing that the pediatric, the third wave will be more, that is more harming the pediatric age group. So everybody, whether it is a learned people or parents or students or postgraduates, everybody is very eager to know much about the spectrum in the pediatric COVID. So we are very thankful to the today's speaker, Dr. Somsekhar and Dr. Raghunath, for their giving the willingness to give the today lecture. And on behalf of the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, our Vice Chancellor and Registrar, I welcome both the speakers today, Dr. Somsekhar and Dr. Raghunath. Over to the speakers now. Dr. Somsekhar.
Thank you. At the outset, I'd like to thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sachidanand, and Dr. Vijay Mahendra, Dr. Dayanand, and all the officials for this invitation. And I welcome my co-speaker, my good friend, Dr. Raghunath. What is the specialty of him being here? Is in the task force. What are the recently designed?
Yes, sir.
He is one of the member for that, and I congratulate him. And he is working for the same. And I'll request Dr. Raghunath to overall view about the COVID and their preparedness. Then we will go with a proper talk.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Somsekhar, and thanks for the welcome. On the outset, I would like to thank the Rajiv Gandhi University for giving me this opportunity, and the Vice Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and the officials of the Rajiv Gandhi University. I would like to share my screen. Can you allow me to share the screen if possible?
Please.
You can, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Sorry?
We can see the slides.
Yes, thank you, Somsekhar. Dr. Somsekhar is a good friend of mine. Both of us were working in Ramaya a long time back, and it's nice to have Somsekhar with me. Somsekhar is a very good speaker. He is a professor of pediatrics and head of department at Ramaya. I am Dr. Raghunath. I work in this pediatric intensivist at Sagar Hospital. So talking about spectrum of COVID, so the spectrum of COVID is so wide. It has touched so many people in so many ways. It could be health, it could be economics, it could be the supply chain, it could be anything. But the most affected among them is the children. So my talk would go in this format. It will go from introduction, Indian spectrum, why third wave, and preparedness for third wave, and then my friend Somsekhar will take over from there, and he will be speaking about mild, moderate, and about the vaccine. And then I rejoin here to talk about severe and MIC management. Now we all know, just to brush up our memory, the Chinese virus, which was reported to WHO in December 31st, and then the WHO said that it was a global health emergency in January 30th, and March 11th it was declared as a global pandemic. Now we are in the midst of this pandemic still, and we are in the second wave of the pandemic. The first case of COVID was picked up from Kerala, and it was a medical student who returned from China. So then following that, we had a lockdown on 25th March, and on 5th January 2021, we somewhat got away from the first wave. And now from March 2021, we are still in the midst of the second wave. So we all know about it. Let us look at the global statistics or data as what has happened during this 14 months or 16 months. The worldwide coronavirus cases are like 17 crores 37 lakh 29,856 patients, people were affected, and the worldwide death is about 37 lakhs 36,525. That's a big number. And when we come to the population of India, it is 1.38 billion, and number of cases in India was 2 crore 86 lakhs 94,879. If I have the numbers are a little difficult for us to spell out because we are not so good with numbers, and that's how I became a doctor. Now, number of cases in Karnataka which was less than the age of 19 years, that is 0 to 19 years. See, most of the statistics are done between 0 to 9, 9 to 19, 20 to 29. This is how the statistics goes on. And for that sake, between the 0 to 19 years, we had 26 lakhs, or roughly about 27 lakhs today. And number of deaths in Karnataka was 30,895. So with this background, if you look at the statistics of Karnataka data, you have 0 to 19 about 79 or 80,000, and 10 to 19 is about 2 lakh. So, and if you look at the age-wise COVID-19 deaths, we have 57 deaths in the. We have, hello. 57 deaths in the I hope I'm audible. Hello. Yeah. So we have 57 deaths in 0 to 9 years age, and 10 to 19 in 82 in 10 to 19. So if you look at the percentage of age-wise case fatality, we are at 0.1% and 0% in between 10 to 19%, 19 years. So this is what is our statistics of Karnataka. So with about, if you look at the whole population less than 20 years, so it constitutes about 12% or less than 12% of confirmed cases. Then we have this MISC, which follows that after the surge of the COVID-19 case, usually after a period of 2 to 6 weeks. The peak, when we had the peak crossing more than 4 lakhs per day, we had more number of children involved. So that's the reason why people are a little panicky. So what is our preparedness for this third wave? So IAP, as a strong body of Indian Academy of Pediatricians, we have about 30,000 pediatricians who are advocating for the health of the child, and we always work for the benefit of the child. So we have sent a letter, and we have also been a part of we have partnered with the government and has pledged support to work for the third wave of pandemic. And following some of the this thing, after discussion with the government, we have come out with some of the things which I will be disclosing now. There about 10% of increase in total bed strength. The total bed strength, if it is increased by 10%, will go about 70,000 beds. And what we have planned is a 10-bedded PICU and 20-bedded HDU and 30-bedded pediatric ward bed in each taluk and district hospitals are what is being planned. And last wave we had a problem and of scarcity of oxygen. So most of the hospitals have doubled up the OT storage oxygen storage capacity. We have also recommended the government to estimate the probable numbers and procure medication, because last time during the wave, there was a lot of problem with procuring remdesivir, tocilizumab, infliximab. All these things were sold in our black marketed. So this time what has happened is, because we have estimated the numbers between the first wave and second wave, and probably we have looked at the number of patients who are going to be sick, and we have suggested numbers to procure these medications so that we don't have problems in future. The IAP is also working with Step 1, which was a very successful program during the first wave. The Step 1 was a telemedicine service which was started. So the IAP Bangalore, IAP Karnataka and IAP Bangalore have already spoken to Step 1, and they are planning to bring in this telemedicine service, so that many of the the things can be handled on the telemedicine platform itself. Senior pediatricians in Karnataka will be available for consultation if, as and when required. It is also divided on taluk and district basis. So usually most of the senior pediatrician would be available for their consultation and opinions when asked by the taluk doctor or the community center doctors. So IAP is coming up with one more training module for the rural doctors. And second thing is tomorrow probably we have a hands-on training session at NIMANS for the BBMP doctor, which is started already. And we're also working on training other doctors in the coming near future. We are also planning to take the help of the social media, electronic media to mitigate fears of the general population, and also to increase the vaccination drive, which would be geared up. So there was certain amount of anxiety for vaccination drive, which was causing a lot of problems. And in the initial period of the third wave, there was not a second wave. There were not many people who were taking vaccine. Now, after the second wave, there is a huge rush for vaccination because people have come to know that vaccination has helped to bring down the mortality and morbidity. So now, how has it impacted the children? This is a very important thing you have to understand, that children all over the state undergoing a lot of state are undergoing a lot of educational and psychosocial and physical problems. This is basically because of the school closure, which has resulted in stress, anxiety, depression among the children and families. Many of the children from below poverty line have been from the poverty above poverty line have been pushed to below poverty line. Many of the children have lost their parents and have become orphans. These are children who are more susceptible for more this thing. The catastrophe of COVID-19 pandemic has jeopardized lives of children in general and their mental health, nutrition, education, and joyful childhood in the last 14 years. Nutrition is very important. If you look at children's in the rural area, it has gone for malnutrition, and in the urban area, it is causing obesity because lack of exercise. So the children who are malnourished are more prone for this COVID infection, as well as the children who are obese are also more problematic in managing them in the COVID, when they have a COVID infection, severe COVID infections. So delay in school reopening may push these children into malnutrition, child labor, child marriage, child trafficking, begging, and making their condition worse. So what is the way forward? So these are we know that these are our problems. The psychosocial problem, there is a malnutrition problem, there is so how do we go about it? We recommend the opening of the school. Why do we, how can we open the school would be the question from the audience. Yes, opening could be done from June 15th once the lockdown is relaxed, and to facilitate the preparation needed for, we can ask the teachers and the admins to come to the school and start sanitizing the school premises, and also reorient staff for new standard or operating protocols to maintain COVID appropriate behavior at the school. Then plan for a ring immunization or a cocooning of immunization where adults around the children are vaccinated on war footing, that is parents and family members, school staff, transport vehicle staff, boarding staff, etc. during the window period. So then utilizing 1 month preparatory phase to connect with children and parents through which through online means like a telephonic conversation or directly going in and the school teacher meeting the villagers and connecting to the children and parents and re-establishing the inclination to the schooling can be done. All these decisions about reopening of the school should be decentralized and should be taken by the local authorities. The school should be started sometime in July 15th, by which time the second wave would have died down. And the school should continue working in full strength till September. And probably when there is a breakout wave of in September, we can go on a holiday and restart in January and complete the academic session. The problem with the schooling is there are two things. The urban students may have been better off when compared to the rural children, but the rural children have lacked in the education because of because of lack of equipments, digital equipments. So basically, the whole world is reeling behind in the education and learning process because of the pandemic. So why are the children going to be affected in the third wave? The scientific data, if you look at it, the first wave we had only 76,854 people. And the second wave, it has doubled, like 1,56,485 children have been affected. That is almost 5% to 10% rise. So we think that the next wave, there could be an increase in number of children being affected. And then there is a distinct discussion about mutation of the virus, because the first wave, the virus was only affecting the adult population, whereas the second wave, we could see young adults were affected more than the adult patients. So this mutation can be there for children later on, and there is no vaccine available as for now. So there are vaccination trials going on. Probably it would be after the third wave, probably we may get vaccines for inoculating children, or we have to import vaccines which can be used in children between 12 to 18 years. But there is nothing below 12 years. So we have to wait for the stage 3 trials and wait for till we get the vaccines. The other thing about the children is SMS is very difficult. That is social distancing, masking and sanitization becomes very difficult, and isolation of children becomes more difficult when you have children who are infected. So these are few of the reasons why the children are going to be affected in the third wave. Now I request Dr. Somsekhar to take over from here. Somsekhar.
Thank you, Dr. Ramath, and well said about the overall view about how the preparation is going on and what is the plan of action. I'll just cover about mild to moderate to identify the cases, as well as on special situation and a little about the vaccines. Raghu, can you come out of
I'm trying. One second. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, once again, I bring warm greetings from my institute, Ramaya Medical College. And today's picture is that we are seeing some good green zone in so many areas in Karnataka. That is from 31st May to 6th June. That's a good sign. And percentage of children being affected less than 20 years, around 12%, and unrelated death is less than 2%, but still we should be very critically in managing for the whatever the third wave is speaking. There are a lot of receiving, and as COVID-19 spreads, and third wave it is pediatric age. So a lot of lacunae and issues was there, and that has made us to prepare ourselves for the third wave, and where it is speculated for the pediatric. Let us just understand what to suspect, whom to suspect in pediatrics. But it's like this is a season where we are getting all the children with febrile episode. So we should be lucky whether it's a febrile episode or a COVID, we don't know, but we should be thinking in this endemic as a pandemic, as one of the future, is one of the patients comes with any illness, with fever episode or symptom like viral illness, we should think of COVID. Whether they have contact or not contact history, we should think of. And common symptoms, we all know: fever, sore throat, cough, malaise, fatigue, and with severe progressive disease, it may be breathlessness also. In adolescent, we do see loss of sense and smell and taste. And very important in children, in young infant, we see poor feeding, diarrhea, vomiting, and abdomen. With shock. That shock is about asymptomatic and also COVID-19. So test. It is not that the test, but ideally, when you suspect, maybe the question is about the number of loads of the lab and turnout time. Maybe deferred for the asymptomatic patient, we can defer for some time. Otherwise, all the suspected patients, you should do the test and you give more importance to those who got comorbidities or high risk of severe disease like chronic kidney disease, heart and liver, lung diseases, diabetes, neurodisability, obese children, malignancy, or an immunosuppression, or if they're suffering some severe malnutrition, and the antigen test is very good and quick and cheap and pretty, but can wait and watch. So as I mentioned about RAT, a positive test, it's in confirmation with RT-PCR guidelines, but come to the gold standard, even though it is could think
Excuse me, sir.
to check for the CT values of RT-PCR. Sorry, am I audible?
Voice
Hello?
is breaking. Somshekhar, voice is breaking.
Is it hello? Is
Yeah.
it clear now?
Yeah, now it is fine. Now it is fine.
As I mentioned, RAT is quick test and we can be a roadmap for further assessment, both clinically as well as further what test to do be done. And RT-PCR is, of course, it's a gold standard with the 30% false negative may be there. But as previously we used to calculate in adults about CT value, it doesn't have any role here. And if you are thinking of MAC and other complication, better to go for assessing the COVID-19 antibodies. And always interpret the positive test in context with the clinical settings. That is very, very important. Just a diagram of interpreting the test. In the first, before the symptoms start, detection is unlikely. But after the symptom onset, and PCR will be likely to be positive from 1 week to 3 weeks, or 3.5 weeks to 4 weeks. And after that, PCR will be negative. But antibody can be detected from the 2nd week to 6 weeks. So that's why it will be useful for MIC. Coming to the other, say necessary swab or whatever the virus isolation, we can detect. But IgM antibodies will be there from the 2nd week, and it will be there for even 6 weeks. It will straight away, it will be going on. Whereas IgM antibodies, it will be there for, it will go to the peak around 3rd week or a maximum 4th week, and it will start declining. So IgM antibodies will rapidly decline, and IgG antibodies continues, and antibody can be detected till 6 weeks. This is a simple interpretation of diagnostic test, which may be useful. Coming to the simple algorithm, if a suspected COVID is there, do the antigen test. If it is positive, COVID is confirmed. If it is a negative, then you do the RT-PCR. If it is positive, once again confirm positive. But if it is negative, what you should do? You should think of other illness also. It is not only pediatric, it is only the COVID. We got a lot of febrile episode, COVID being negative or no complications of COVID. This is a season where rain has started, or the end of summer, rainy situation started. We are seeing a lot of febrile episode, like viral hemorrhagic fever is there, enteric fever is there. We should be more vigilant about this thing. But whenever you get a patient like this, think it is a COVID-19. Rule out other diseases, then you come to conclusion. But why I want to put a small word on this CT scan, because last time we saw, we had two spectrum of the disease. One is PCR was negative, but they had glorified disease in the chest. So CT was zealously used also. So what is the role of CT scan in pediatric? CT scan is more sensitive than chest X-ray, but involves cost. And in pediatrics, it's sedation, and of course radiation is a matter. So it is. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it is not indicated in mild diseases and prolonged fever without any respiratory involvement, or any patients with for moderate to severe disease with positive RT-PCR. But here we should take the involvement of lower respiratory tract is important. But it is indicated if you suspect that suspect COVID-19 with refractory symptom but negative RT-PCR, acutely sick children with breathlessness, where you need to determine the cause of illness, and triage need to be done where a patient has to be admitted in the ward or the ICU. There it is to be done. And known case of known severe COVID-19 and rapidly deteriorating patient, we should do the CT test. Otherwise, it is not indicated. Coming to the management of asymptomatic COVID-19 children, and of course, it is very difficult to determine whether they're pre-symptomatic, asymptomatic, or post-symptomatic. We don't know, but we should be taking the good history is helpful, and history of prior illness, contact with, and whatever the if at all any CT value. Of course, that is doesn't have any role. But at this level of asymptomatic COVID-19, there is no intervention is required. Isolation from the parents, if possible, is better. And watch for the development of symptom. If you think it's pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, watch for the symptom for next 10 days. And if you are planning for any surgery, what is circumcision or any other planned surgery or a repair, everything should be delayed for some time. Coming to the mild disease, how to manage? We should manage through by assessing their clinical criteria, investigation, and the treatment. Mild COVID disease, what is the clinical criteria of what we see? I already mentioned about fever, sore throat, rhinorrhea, cough, diarrhea, vomiting, and pain abdomen. These are the classical picture which we see in other illness also. But when we in this season, we should think it is a COVID and watch for the disease progression, as well as possibly try to halt the progress by carefully watching for the complication or doing the PCR test. How to manage? What is the nowadays today it is clearly mentioned from Government of India not to use any of the medication, including the remdesivir or whatever the biological. So what if the management of mild cases is once again symptomatic care of sponging, maintenance of hydration, give paracetamol SOS or nasal decongestant and antitussive as and when required. But definitely to be mentioned is now there's no role of zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D. This is the best way we should introduce the family diet for them and to avoid the what are the over-counter medications or the food also. Unnecessary, whatever they shown in that media should not be taken. Home good food, good nutritious food is more than enough. And once again, to re-emphasize, steam inhalation should be discouraged. There is no role of azithromycin, which was used badly, toxic in ivermectin or antiflus. So should not be used. Is once again, there's no role of multivitamins, no role of antivirus. Steroids should be definitely should not be given. Investigation, there's no role unless if the patient has got fever for more than 3 to 4 days. Investigation for alternate diagnosis, then do the CBC, CRP, urine routine, blood culture, x-ray to rule out the other diseases. Important thing is when you pick up the mild disease, do the home isolation. And usually there are 10 days after the symptom onset, you should be afebrile for 3 days and it should be followed for 7 days for home isolation. And previously we should document the negative RT-PCR, which is definitely not required here. For the parents to be guidelines, we should explain about what are the dangerous, how to take care of them and dangerous sign, explain and reassure them and tell them how to use a simple chart of temperature, saturation, and how to count the respiratory rate when the baby is not crying. Look for respiratory breathlessness like chest and drying, nasal flare, bluish discoloration, cold extremities, urine output should be monitored. We should educate them either through a pamphlets or a gadget, some media assistance, and saturation should be monitored. And communication with the doctor and whom to contact in case of emergency is very, very important. Which hospital? That's what Dr. Raghunath was telling. There is a triage, there is a system of place from IAP as well as Government of Karnataka whom to contact, where is a triage will be done, where patient will be shifted. And one more to continue with this thing, when to bring to the hospital, explaining the red flag signs is important. If the patient has got progressive breathlessness, reduction in the activity, poor feeding, very important. It is not like in adults where we get they'll tell everything. In children, it will be subtle symptoms. We should pick up something like poor feeding, abdominal pain, vomiting, refusal of it, decreased activity, or if it is progressive hypoxemia or seizures. And one more thing is if they got prolonged fever, that is we see commonly with persistent fever, rule out other condition also. and do the test CBC or check for the other conditions like viral hemorrhagic fever, malaria, or enteric fever. And here, if it is just if there is no respiratory involvement, there is no need of any chest CT. You can do the chest X-ray if at all required, and no role of antibiotics unless warranted. If you're thinking rice counts or any other signs are seen, close monitoring is required. Definitely, there is no role of remdesivir or steroid at this level also. But here you should be vigilant if he is going for any respiratory compromise or anything. Once again, red flags reinforces and red flag signs in mild diseases is persistent fever for more than 4 to 5 days, rapid breathing with cyanosis with saturation being less than 94%, poor oral intake associated with abdominal pain or loose stools, where they are going for moderate to severe dehydration, decreased activity, decreased urine output, with signs of severe dehydration. They are the red flag signs in mild disease. Coming to the important thing is if the patient has serious comorbidities at the mild level, please have a close look up on that, and if it requires, go for the hospitalization. Once again, I already mentioned about the indications for hospitalization is very important. As I mentioned, comorbid condition, falling saturation, persistent fever, progressive respiratory symptoms, and associated with any seizures or encephalopathy. That is why you should means they are going for moderate level. So we're coming to the moderate. Once again, clinical criteria is moderate, where they got respiratory being involved. The fast breathing should be taken care. The less than 2 months, it is more than 60 per minute. 2 to 12 months, more than 50 per minute. 1 to 5 years, 40 per minute. More than 5 years, 30 per minute. We should educate the parents as well as the healthcare worker. Saturation, if it is around 90 to 94%, we should consider as moderate. And what to do? Better, you should admit this patient in the ward and do all the basic investigations, including the electrolytes, liver enzymes, and coagulation profile, D-dimer, blood culture, chest X-ray, and repeat if it requires 48 to 72 hours. Here also a lot of criteria about the medications are there. And here once again, the role of paracetamol, hydration, fluids, oxygen is very, very important. Maintain around more than 92%. Dexamethasone is indicated. Remdesivir, it is not at all indicated unless it is individually case based. Okay, you should be clear about the enzymes and the creatinine clearance before starting. And if you are thinking any secondary infection, start with amoxicillin or oral azithromycin if patient is awake. So these are the medication now. As dexamethasone has been recommended, remdesivir with a dose of 0.15 mg per kg IV or orally, and or prednisolone for 5 to 14 days depending on the requirement. Remdesivir more than 40 kg, 200 mg on a day in 1:100 milligram per day, once a day. Or if it is around 3.5 to 40 kg is 5 mg per kg on day 1, and 2.5 mg per kg on OD. So once again off the level. But what is the clear guidelines from the central ministry is remdesivir also is obsolete indicated in the even in moderate. It is only a case based. Of course, if the patient has got obesity, other risk factors of cardiac issues, or familial hyperlipidemia, or any other patient is on chronic renal failure or anything, there is a role of thrombolytics. We can use the 1 minute. Not separate. Okay. Got it, sir. Anticoagulation, yeah, low molecular weight occurrent. It was not seen, sorry. 0.5 mg per kg subcutaneous BD and for 14 days. But mainly what we see, what I want to advise is here, it's obese children are more risky, and if you do the, even though it looks symptomatic, we should be very vigilant. There is a role of very few papers are there about anticoagulation or low molecular weight heparin, 0.5 mg per kg subcutaneous or whatever the reason. We can give 1 to 2 months depending on the requirement. Initially, at least for in the hospital stay, further you take care of it. And indication is once again severe critical disease, moderate disease for more than 2 risk factor, and molecularly related D-dimers are the indications. And risk factor of thromboembolism is more than 14 years, obesity, central line, and all those things that Dr. Raghunath will explain about when it comes to severe disease. So discharge criteria is once again resolution of symptoms, maintaining the saturation more than 95% of oxygen for 4 days, improving the trend in the inflammatory markers. Negative RT-PCR is not required, and home isolation I given the guidelines about guiding the parents as well as taking care of the children, giving the red flag sign, maintaining of the nutrition is very important. That's about the discharge criteria. As mentioned about this mild and moderate, what I mentioned is mild may be asymptomatic. Asymptomatic where there no symptoms will be there, but just COVID-19 will be positive. Just reassurance and close monitoring is important. In mild, there may be GA symptom or respiratory symptom. Closely monitor them. Just what are the paracetamol monitor and home isolation. Guide the parents about the how to watch for the red signals. In moderate, it is the admission is required where depending on the severity, you do that investigation. You can start with steroids or remdesivir or the low molecular heparin, depending on the requirement if they are going for severe. As with no biologicals or other medications are reinforced. And I just mentioned about the discharge criteria. After this, I want to just request my friend Dr. Raghu. He's working in the high dependency areas and done a lot of work. And just Raghu, this case, if it goes to the severe, I said, see, this the same child came with a moderate level with progressive breathlessness. Just tell us like how to manage this patient further in the high dependency area, as well as I have a small scenario. Nowadays, just 2 days back, I saw a child. Is very tired, very extremely tired, and on examination there was little tachypnea. Both the Dr. Raghu?
Yes,
Please, that's what
Somsekhar.
I was telling. I just about moderate, but moderate is initial phase is okay. When it goes to, it will become a severe only. And I explained one case in about a child coming with rashes and severe pain abdomen and little tachypneic also. What we should suspect in this? Both, please explain.
See, whenever you are in a pandemic, and the first thing you would do is always think about the viral infection which is in the pandemic, and then think of other things. So here we have a child who is lethargic, who's got a respiratory rate which is higher, which means that he is in a severe case. He could be a severe case of COVID. If RT-PCR or any other evidence is there for positivity, yes, we have to take it as a severe case and go further. So severity of COVID, can I share the slides and start?
Yeah, please start. Please start.
So severe COVID manifestation is one is severe pneumonia. If the patient has ARDS, sepsis, shock, multi-organ dysfunction, or pneumonia with cyanosis, or with respiratory distress, or SpO2 less than 90%, is considered as severe COVID. Like what my friend presented just now, the case scenario. These are children as considered to be severe COVID. And how do we manage these children? These children have to be admitted to PICU or HDU, where oxygen should be immediately started, depending upon the type of respiratory distress. Whether if it is a mild distress, you can start off with nasal prong oxygen or face mask oxygen, or if it is a little probably the respiratory he is in impending respiratory failure, probably we try NIV for some time and probably go on to intubation, elective intubation. So these children are basically kept in HDU or ICU, and this should be kept nail orally. We all know about it. Start some IV fluids, and for severe COVID, it has been advised to start dexamethasone. Corticosteroids are advised, and dexamethasone is the dose is 0.15 milligrams twice a day. For about 5 to 14 days is what is expected. Depending on the severity of the disease, it can be, you can give it. So then we can also use antiviral, that is Remdesivir. Remdesivir as such, there is no studies about Remdesivir to use it below the age of 19 years. So, but we can use it as an emergency utilization. And as my friend had told earlier, Remdesivir is not being advocated nowadays by the WHO, but still in the government of India guidelines. The last one which I read had Remdesivir in it. So the Remdesivir dose is, if the child is more than 40 kilos, you are using 200 milligram loading dose and 100 milligram for next 4 days. Or if the child is between 3.5 to 40 kilos, it is 5 milligrams loading followed by 2.5 milligrams loading dose. Whenever you are starting Remdesivir, one thing you have to remember is you have to make sure the liver function and the renal functions are adequate. If there is any impairment, you are not going to start antiviral, this Remdesivir. So there is no role, as Somshekhar has already told, there is no role for hydroxy chloroquine, favipiravir, ivermectin, lopinavir, ritonavir, immunofenovir. All these things have been used, and it is found that it is of no benefits. Most of these children with the severe COVID also have some amount of dehydration and maybe in renal may require renal replacement therapy. So those children who have they can have acute kidney injury really requiring renal replacement. So how do you treat this ARDS children? ARDS is treated like any other ARDS child. So if it is a mild ARDS, you are going to do a humidified high flow nasal oxygen or a non-invasive ventilation. If it is a severe ARDS, then we are going to intubate, mechanical ventilation with low tidal volumes, and that is 6 ml per kg, and high positive end expiratory pressures, and also accept the pH around 7.2, less than around 7.25 to 7.3, accept PCO2s on the higher range and PO2s at the saturations of around 90, and try to ventilate, probably try prone ventilation if the ARDS, if there is severe hypoxia. These are the usual parameters which can be tried with severe ARDS. In case the child is not getting better with all these maneuvers, then probably we can think of high frequency oscillation ventilation. And now we have this ECMO everywhere in the city. We can try ECMO on these children. The results are not so good with ECMO. Now, coming down to shock, these children who are presenting with shock, we have to be very careful. Give fluid bolus, so 10 to 20 ml, crystalloid over 1 hour, depending upon the type of this thing response. Or if the child is very sick, you can give a fast bolus. And ideally speaking, inotropes, epinephrine, norepinephrine, depending on the requirement of the child, we can use it. So if you look at a viewpoint, if you recollect everything, severe illness is severe pneumonia, ARDS, sepsis, septic shock, or a multi-organ dysfunction. These are considered a severe illness. And then if you have pneumonia with cyanosis, SpO2 less than 90%, increased respiratory efforts like granting lethargy, then you can consider it as severe illness. So these children are admitted in ICU-HDU, or if it is ARDS, we are going to follow the same principles. And if there is a shock, we are going to take it as septic shock, or start on, be careful by giving shock, watch for fluid overload, because it could be due to myocardial dysfunction also. So this is about the moderate COVID. We also have a new entity called as MISC. This was the background for this is that the first case was reported of a child with Kawasaki-like disease and concurrent with concurrent COVID-19 was published in US on 7th April of 2020. And this was a severely ill children. It has a varied presentation. It was reported from UK, USA, and Italy. The first reported case in India was from KKTCH, that is Kanchakamikoti Child Trust Hospital in Chennai. So this has various nomenclature. The CDC and WHO considers it as multi-organ inflammatory syndrome in children, whereas the NHS, that is the London school, thinks it as gives the name as pediatric inflammatory multi-organ syndrome post-COVID. This is what is the thing, but we would go with the WHO and the CDC guidelines and call it as MIC. So what is the pathogenesis? Usually we see this after a month after the peak curve. Majority test negative for SARS-CoV-2 virus, but will be positive for the antibodies. The acquired immunity may be more than the direct viral injury, which causes this thing. And antibody dependent enhancement is also well known during this disease. So if you look at this diagram, see the ACE2 receptors are present in the nasal cavity, vascular endothelium, and in the heart and other parts of the body. Through the nasal cavity, once the COVID virus enters, it activates the macrophage activation and releases causes cytokine release and antibody release, for leading on to hyperimmune response, leading on to meningeal irritation, mucosal inflammation, pulmonary edema, ventricular dysfunction, shock, and multi-organ dysfunction. So this is one of the theory for pathogenesis of multi-organ dysfunction. There is another theory which has come up recently, was presented by Dr. Kishan Chugh. The children with MISC had significant increased release of zonulin. It is a protein that reversibly regulates the intestinal permeability, and this increases the circulation. This causes the virus to enter into the circulation. These viruses are usually present in the gastrointestinal system, and it has been also noted that children with COVID excrete coronavirus through their stools for quite some time. So what has been noted is this zonulin will increase the permeability of the intestinal this thing and allow the coronavirus to enter the circulation, which later on causes all the multi-inflammatory response. There is something called as larsotide, which is the antagonist to this zonulin. It has been tried in one of the patients and it is found to be effective. However, it is in the trials. So the pathogenesis is not well understood. It is a new disease. So there are two postulates for it, and I brought out both of them. So when do you suspect MIC? So suspicion of MIC comes when children or adolescents between the age group of 0 to 19 years of age have fever more than 3 days, which the fever should be high grade fever, usually around 100 to 101, 102 for more than 3 days. And two of these should be present, that is rash or bilateral non-purulent conjunctivitis or mucocutaneous inflammation, which can be seen in the oral cavity, hands and feet, or hypotension or shock, features of myocardial dysfunction in the echo, pericarditis, valvulitis, coronary abnormalities, or you have elevated troponin or NT-proBNP, which should be elevated, or evidence of coagulopathy where PT, PTT, INR are elevated, or you have D-dimers which are elevated. So, and the other thing is acute gastrointestinal problems should be present in most of these children. One of the two, if two of the following things are there, then you can think of MISC. Along with this, there should be elevated markers of inflammation such as ESR, C-reactive protein, and procalcitonin. There should be no obvious microbiological cause for inflammation, including bacterial sepsis or streptococcal shock syndrome, and evidence of COVID-19 with RT-PCR antigen test or serology being positive, or likely contact with patient with COVID-19. These are the criteria to make a diagnosis of MISC. So how do we manage these children with MISC? Most of these children are better to be admitted in the ICU and if the child has got shock, please administer the crystalloids bolus with caution and start inotropes as required. If there is cardiac dysfunction, then probably we can start IVIG immediately, 2 grams per kg over 24 to 48 hours, and also can start plus methylprednisolone 1 to 2 milligrams per kg per day. You can also add a broad spectrum antimicrobial because it can be due to other reasons also. And we have to start aspirin 3 to 5 milligrams per kg. Maximum dose is 80 milligrams. Enoxaparin is all started as 1 milligram per kg in case of coronary aneurysm or echo showing a low ejection fraction. Then we think of starting enoxaparin. So if the child does not improve, then we can consider for a repeat dose of IVIG 2 grams per kg or dose corticosteroids, that is methylprednisolone 10 to 3 mg per kg for 3 to 5 days. And in spite of this, there is no improvement. We can think of tocilizumab and anacarin. So once you have started steroids, you have to taper it over 2 to 3 weeks while monitoring the inflammatory markers. Aspirin has to be continued for 6 weeks, and enoxaparin for at least 3 weeks. If you have aneurysmal dilatation or if you have ejection fraction less than 30%, wait till the ejection fraction improves. Till then, we have to give enoxaparin. So if there is cardiac involvement, we have to repeat ECG 48 hourly and repeat echo in 7 to 14 days, and then repeat between 4 to 6 weeks. If the initial echo is showing some abnormality, probably we have to repeat echo after 1 year. So, and now if you look, these are my numbers of, this is our case experience regarding MISC. We had total number of children who were 20%. 20 numbers. Number of children with fever was 19 out of 20 were having fever. Previous history of COVID was in 10 patients, and COVID IgG antibodies were in 19 out of 20 patients. COVID RT-PCR was positive in 1 patient. Cardiac involvement was more than 50%. Inotrope support was required in 25% of the patient. Oxygen support was required in 45%, and most of the children recovered without any problems. We can see the recovery within 48 hours after starting IVIG usually. So with these words, I conclude. I'll request Dr. Somsekhar to give an overview of vaccination and special.
That was good actually, Dr. Raghu. You helped lecture about severe disease as well as management of your own experience of managing MISC. That's nice actually. And I'll just go through that few slides on special situation, how to manage, what are the things we should look into that. As we know, in the special situation, mainly neonatal care, how to take care, we all know. And important thing is when to do the test. If mother is positive, test can be done within 1 or 2 days. And if the new onset of symptoms, you can repeat once again after 3 to 5 days, depending on the requirement. If it is negative, nothing to worry. Important thing is previously last epidemic pandemic, first or second wave, we didn't see much of this thing. In second wave, we started seeing some symptoms, and even case of mucormycosis has been reported in neonatal also. So we should be careful with about the neonatal COVID. Of course, vertical transmission rate and interpartum and post natal transmission occurs commonly, but it's preventable. And first trimester effects we still are not understood. And MISC is extremely late, but been reported also. But what I want to reinforce here is rooming in is very, very important. Breastfeeding is very, very important. KMC is very important. Support direct breastfeeding or express breastfeeding, and if both are stable, let them be together and provide KMC with contact precautions always. And start the immunization as early as per the guidelines I'm going to share. Hepatitis B can be given immediately, PCG after the time of discharge, and OPV within 15 days can be given. And follow the routine policies. And as I mentioned about immunization, routine care, and everything. About chronic conditions, or when the patient has got chronic renal failure or resistant nephrotic syndrome or other patients, please see to that they should contain the maintenance immunosuppression in asymptomatic or mild COVID in remission. Scale down or without immunosuppression if they are moderate or severe. Okay, or they got leukopenia, renal disease from the nephrology chapter bulletin. And admission, of course, required any patient on the immunocompromised state or if they are dialysis. Of course, where they stress on stress dose steroids 0.5 mg per kg for 5 to 7 days. Of course, these are all should be done under the supervision of nephrologist. And dialysis on the maintenance dialysis, COVID dialysis unit should be that. And acute kidney injury or acute or chronic peritoneal dialysis, if no feasibility or sustainable for hemodialysis. Coming to the hematological disorder, and all the cases of febrile neutropenia with COVID requires admission, or every child with fever with neutropenia, COVID infection with COVID infection definitely requires admission in the hospital. Send the blood culture, start first time antibiotic. What is the recommendation is ceftazidime with amikacin and other supportive care as per the pediatric COVID protocols. Important thing is what we are not addressing is about psychosocial issues, what's happening with the children. It is a physical problem like headache, dry eye, psychosocial issues like easy distractibility, irritability, gadget addiction, education. Dr. Raghu mentioned about the educational issues and psychomotor complaints. And what are the social effects? What's going on in school dropout? Child labor has reinforced. Already we are seeing so many child labor and child marriages are going on, and their long-term effect. What will affect on the social problems and what is the quality we are going to have in the future should be doing. But coming to the mental effects, they'll have so many children are coming with fear, frustration, social isolation, sleep issues, concern about academics, and they are also adolescent. They are into violence, and important thing is mobile addiction. We should know some red flags in before we should educate the parents about red flags. And in toddlers especially, they come with they'll not have full blown psychological issues. They'll show in the form of vomiting or abdominal pain or toilet accidents, asking for bottle, thumb sucking, and wanted to be carried all the time. That's what they are seeing. And coming to the young children, we see misbehavior, defiant behavior, and temper tantrums are increasing. And of course, they have sleep changes. They experience nightmares and not able to take the naps during the day. And demanding more attention is also being seen, that too during the nap and the bedtime. Coming to what I want to focus you on, like red flags and that is, please keep a watch. Mood swings are there because we're seeing a lot of suicidal tendency, poor self-esteem, loss of pleasure, remaining aloof, the gadgets, and in a lot of interpersonal conflicts, substance abuse, scholastic issues, and self-harm. We should be very vigilant about this. Keep talking to them. Take psychosocial effort. Family support is very, very important. And what we are forgetting about the children, what's happening with the psychosocial issues, special children, they are becoming worse and because of the SIP, they are not addressed, especially autistic children, ADHD children, those who have got long-term chronic psychological issues or OCD children are not given attention. Maybe they have missed their medication or missed their what are the follow-up or not being counseled. I think we should focus on these special children too. And what is that we should do? We can with good nutrition is important, and involvement in household activity, physical activities are very important. Offer choices to the children, participate as a family. Good sleep is recommended. Good sleep hygiene should be done. And academics don't do too much of emphasis on academics, but this should be connected with academics is very important. Keep a watch on screen. Screening time is very important. And extracurricular reading or writing to be kept. We see a lot of storytelling. The forums are there. We can use so many forums are there to make the child active or group activities that can be used. After mentioning that, gadget mania, of course, that is increasing our cyber crimes, social bullying, or the things. We should be keep a watch. I think we are seeing in the what are the media about the same thing, same gadget related issues. And important thing is once the patient is discharged from the severe illness or moderate, we should have a post-COVID clinic for children, and we should either initially virtually followed by in-person visit and look for any post-COVID symptoms, monitor their growth, development, immunization, interdepartmental coordination is important, or psychological or neuropsychiatric evaluation is also important, and refer to post-COVID clinic and the eye center as early as possible. Already mentioned about the vaccination in unit, but coming to the vaccination is going on today. The government has given the lot of centers about starting the trials, and WHO has mentioned about from 12 to 18 years they are going to start, followed by 6 to 12, 11 years, then 2 to 6 years they are going to start already. and so many companies have come forward. The third phase of trial is going on, and the government has declared about shortly they are going to give the vaccination for all the children. And main aim is to reduce the mortality. But that is the only answer. Nothing but apart from the social, what are the norms? Is the only, and the school should have a norm with the in future once we get the vaccine, school admission should be priority with the vaccine, complete vaccination. They should give the admission. That should come, and all the priority should be given for the safety vaccination drive, which is going to come in the future. Today also, this has been yesterday in Nagpur, it is Dr. Vasant Kalakara as a PA started, and so many centers have started about the phase 2 or phase 3 trials from 7 to 12 years and 2 to 6 years, and hoping for the good results. The started centers are Delhi, Nagpur, Hyderabad, and Patna, hoping for this thing. What is the one main concern we are facing? 9.27 children are suffering from malnutrition. That is going to be a serious issue. I think we should care. They'll become the vulnerable age for this thing, even in Karnataka. Or MISC, we should be more vigilant, and gadget related issues even should be given the lot of importance. But of course, as we said, Dr. Raghunath being in the task force, he has mentioned how our academy is being preparing ourselves with the senior leaders, right from triage for the high dependency hospital, from the gadgets and the transit, everything has been explained with the government license. They do the best. Already few things have started. These are all the positive hopes. They started the first phase and the children's hospital being started. I just thought of sharing with you. This is a very positive note. We'll start because of the whatever we are experienced with the second wave. The third wave, we should not we should not burn our fingers. So finally, the prevention is important, social norms, good nutrition, vaccination, then we can see the smile on the children's face. That's about this thing. In summary, there is a surgery, maybe there, think of the illness, categorize them, do the test as a required, and manage as per the guidelines, whatever been recommended on a particular day, and majority guide the parents and educate them, educate the society about how to manage this mild and asymptomatic cases, and educate them about educate the healthcare workers about rational use of medication, and educate them about early identification of MIC and complicated COVID, and vaccination. Let us give positive feedback about the vaccination, so that and document the safety and efficacy and adequate availability of vaccine is important. We should promote the vaccine as a pediatrician, as from the healthcare worker, or everybody should actively participate in future for the pediatric vaccine too. So that's what we explained so far about just a overall view of COVID in pediatric, as well as mild, moderate, severe MISC, special situation about psychological issues, nutrition, and vaccination, and in newborn, and as well as in future what's happening, what is our preparedness. And there was a question about mycormycosis. My friend has already answered, Dr. Raghunath, about there has been 2 cases been reported. Both are juvenile diabetic. I think that is being addressed. A lot of expert opinion and the protocols are being designed for the managing mucormycosis in pediatric age 2. So that's it, Dr. Raghu. Further, any input from you?
That's it. Probably it is also related to the way oxygen has been delivered.
Yes.
And it is mainly because of the humidified oxygen what we are giving. If the water is not changed regularly, it can lead to this thing, mucormycosis. And also it is there are also suggested that zinc increases the frequency of infection with the fungal organisms. So these are the 2 things, and probably that is the reason why all these multivitamins are removed from the government.
A lot of known people are there. Senior pediatrician Georgi Rao sir is there. Namaste, sir.
Namaste, sir. Georgi Rao, sir.
Thank you, sir. All my so many colleagues are there. Thank you all on both of. Any other questions in the chat box? I'll just check it.
Dr. Rupashri. Dr. Rupashri?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go to the question.
Yes.
So
Somebody is about this PPT. Will share the PPT. I think they'll send it. We'll send the PPT.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So very good afternoon to one and all. And first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Somshekhar sir and Dr. Raghunath sir for accepting our invitation and giving this wonderful presentation on spectrum of pediatric COVID. So already, as you already discussed, there was a question on mucormycosis. So another question is, what is the probable recovery rate or severity of COVID-19 in children as compared to adults? Can we have any insight on this?
In fact, if you ask us in our experience, both they recover very fast. That is the beauty of the pediatrics. They present fast and they recover fast. We see majority of the times. Last time we helped in the second wave, even the first wave. So many patients used to ask about the. It was a telecommunication. We should just tell them about to monitor a few things, and if at all any test, we should tell them after do the test after 2-3 days. By the time they were recovered, the recovery rate is very good in pediatrics.
As compared to adults?
Madam, if you look at the statistics, about 2 lakhs or about roughly around 26 lakhs people who are affected. In that, the percentage of mortality is only 0.1% in the group of 0 to 9.
That's a very good.
0 to yes, madam. 10 to 19 is 0% mortality. So we have a very good outcomes with COVID.
Okay. Sir, do we have any hand raise options?
Sorry.
Gautam, do we have any hand raise options here?
Yes, ma'am. In the reactions.
Okay. So please allow them to unmute themselves and ask the question.
Done, ma'am.
Ma'am, they can raise their hand.
Yeah. So it is for the information of all the participants. This entire session, it is recorded and it will be available in official Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences website and also in university official Facebook, YouTube and Twitter also. So I think we have come to the end of this session. Over to you, Dayanand sir.
Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. Today our Dr. Sachidanand sir, the Vice Chancellor and Bijay Mahindra, they're busy with other meetings. So it is my responsibility to it is my responsibility to deliver the vote of thanks. Yes, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Registrar, Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, I thank today's speakers, Dr. Somshekhar, the head of the Department of Pediatrics, MS Ramaiah Medical College, and Dr. Raghunath, who is the head of the pediatrics at Sagar Hospitals and is a pediatric intensivist. We thank you very much, sir, for your very informative talk on the burning issue, that is the perspective on the pediatric COVID infection. And I thank the organizers, that is they're collaborating with us, is the Echo India, for their cooperation. And I thank all the officers of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Dr. Rupashri, Dr. Mahindra, and Dr. Kirti and Somshekhar, who are the system analysts. And I thank all the participants who are participated in the today's webinar. And I thank one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I request everyone to please put the feedback form in the chat.
Hello, Rupashri, next program. Tell me about the. Dr. Rupashri.
Yes, sir.
About Friday's.
Can you please host it? So next
Hello.
we have, yes, sir, we have continuing with the same webinar series. So next Friday, coming Friday, we have a talk on by Dr. Mahesh Kottapalli on management of mucormycosis.
Mycosis.
Yes.
Okay.
So please, I request everybody to join
So
the
join
session next Friday at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much. Okay, sir. So
Okay.
we can end this session. Thank you very much, Nagunath sir. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dayanand sir.
Thanks for the.
Thank you. Thank you, Gautam.
So we may end this session now.
Okay.
Gautam,
Thank
end
you.
the session. Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm ending now. Thank you, sir.